On today's show, the Hawks go to Cleveland and lose by a lopsided margin in their final in-season tournament game of the 2023-24 season. We'll touch on all of what transpired, how it might inform the future, and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1599 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday. And I want to remind you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day, and check us out anywhere you get your podcasts, places like Apple and Spotify and YouTube, and again, anywhere you get your podcasts here at Locked On Hawks. It's our fourth show of the week already. Very busy time to be covering the basketball space, and hopefully you are enjoying the show. If you're a first-time listener, welcome aboard, and we'll dive right in now to what became a loss for the Hawks on the road, 128-105 in Cleveland in their in-season tournament finale this year. They are now officially eliminated. That was going to be probably what was going to happen no matter what happened in this game. In fact, now that we know the results, if the Hawks had won by 30, they would not have been actually able to advance. So they were kind of drawing dead coming into the night. But still not a great performance from the Hawks on the whole. Their second straight loss. They're now 1-2 to begin this road trip, and they're now 8-9 overall this season. Atlanta did lead this one by as many as 12 points in the first half, but were down by the time halftime arrived after they gave up a big run in the second quarter with DeAndre Hunter actually in the locker room. We'll come back to that later on in the show. And then they got second half, they kind of just got beat up by 20 points in a half. They shot the ball terribly in the second half, and then defensively, it was really not a lot of fun. So anyway, big picture, a loss for the Hawks on the road. They were underdogs in this game to a pretty solid and good Cleveland team at relatively full strength. The Hawks, according to FanDuel, our friends over there, were 4.5-point underdogs in this game. So obviously, they were not close to covering the spread. They certainly were not, quote-unquote, expected to win in this spot, especially without Jalen Johnson, who I think the sports books have not quite accounted for at quite the same level they probably should at this point. But anyway, a loss for the Hawks on this Tuesday, and as we always do here, we'll sort of talk about what transpired in the big picture, and then we'll sort of drill down as the podcast goes along. And broadly speaking, I would say this was a two-way loss for the Hawks. Offense was poor, defense was poor, but we'll start with the defense because that's, of course, the bigger problem area for the Hawks on the whole moving forward. Offensively, which we'll touch on in a second, the Hawks are going to be pretty good, I have no doubt about that, but defensively, they haven't been not great this entire season, and without Jalen Johnson, the problems are magnified. So, ended up this game with a 126 defensive rating. For those of you that may not know what that means the Hawks allowed 1.26 points per possession. That's a very, very bad number. It was also well over 130 until garbage time set in the fourth quarter. So, it was even worse until the very end of the contest. Cleveland shot 54% from the floor in this game. They had 64 points in the paint. The Hawks struggled in the half court. They struggled in transition in this game. They did only really one thing well defensively, and that was that they forced 17 turnovers from Cleveland. But that wasn't nearly enough to kind of offset all the stuff that the Cavs did well in this game. And honestly, the perimeter stuff for Atlanta defensively was simply atrocious. That's where I'll use for tonight. I'm sure I'll talk about it more later on in the show, but it was a disaster. Anytime DeAndre Hunter left the court, he's kind of their only remaining quality defender on the wing right now. And it wasn't like they were awesome with him on the court, but it was even worse when he was off the floor in this game. The absence of Jalen Johnson is very big, as I think Hawks fans know more than most. And I talked about this on the show the last couple days, that the Hawks are in even more dire straits defensively than offensively without Jalen Johnson. But the reality is, like, guys have to execute better and pick up the slack because he's not going to be there for a while. And again, like, Hunter is probably the only healthy non-center in the rotation that I would say is even an average individual defensive player. Maybe you could say Wes Matthews at this point, but he's still a 37-year-old who's not playing a ton of minutes. You know, Trey's improved a lot, but he's still not a great defender. DeJounte Murray, I've piled on a lot, but I think he's been pretty struggling, pretty poor, I would say. Big picture in the last year and a half. AJ Griffin at this stage is pretty rough defensively, and Saddiq Bey has been like actively harmful and bad defensively this year. There's not really any way around that. It's been hard to watch at times if you enjoy defense like I do. And look, Donovan Mitchell is really good at basketball. He had 40 points tonight, and like that, some of that is just like a star being a star, and some of that's going to happen in the NBA. But Cleveland's not a special offensive team by any means, and it was way too easy for Cleveland to score in bunches in this game. And I would just say defensively, it was not good enough. The offense made this game more lopsided, but if you just said, okay, this is going to be what the Hawks do defensively in this game, you're not going to win very often giving up what they were able to give up to a Cleveland team that has a really good defense, and they're just kind of average offensively. And the Hawks were not able to get stops for any length of time after the first quarter, basically, in this one. Offensively, it fell off a cliff at different times in this game. They could not afford that, clearly, as I just talked about with how bad the defense was in this one. They ended up with about a 101 offensive rating. And this Hawks team is not going to win very much or even be close to winning very much with that kind of production. So that's why I say it was a two-way loss. It was much more frustrating defensively in a lot of ways, but the offense was not good. And granted, Cleveland was number 1 in the league in defense last year. They haven't been quite that good this year, but now that they're back and kind of healthy, and they've been really, really good anytime they have Evan Mobley and Jared Allen playing together, which they did a lot in this game. So you faced a good defense in this game. There's no shame in kind of falling short of your normal baseline. But the Hawks also did not play well on offense all the way around. The wild thing is, the Hawks actually did very well in this game in the possession battle. For a team that lost by 25, or 23 points, I should say, you would expect them to be getting beat up in that category. But the Hawks ended up taking 8 more shots than the Cavs and 7 more free throws than the Cavs. If all you knew about the game was that, like, you're in a pretty good place, a pretty good recipe there. Unless you shoot just terribly, which the Hawks did, by the way, and play bad defense, which the Hawks did in this game. But yeah, the bones were there on offense. The shot making was not. So they ended up this game with a 35% field goal mark and 13 of 44 from 3. Those are really, really rough numbers. Everyone that listens to this podcast probably knows that. Of note, the Hawks were 1 of 12 on mid-range attempts. So anything outside of, floater range, anything outside of like 10 feet, I believe the Hawks were 14 of 56, which is 25%. So yeah, you're going to lose. Second half, by the way, overall, 28% from the field after halftime. Even at the end in like total garbage time, Quinn Snyder talked about this after the game, and I think he was right about this. They got good shots with the third unit, and it didn't actually matter, but they missed those shots too. Like they just couldn't make a shot in the second half of this game. In fact, they shot less than 31% from the floor in the last 3 quarters combined after being pretty decent in the first quarter. Only 3 guys shot 50% or higher, and 2 of them were centers, in Capella and Okongwu. So Trey and DeJounte were 8 of 26 combined from the floor. That's going to have you beat a lot if you're the Hawks. 0 of 11 from the field from AJ Griffin and Wes Matthews off the bench in this game. So, like, up and down the roster offensively, outside of the centers, there just was not a lot to be positive about on either end of the floor in this game. It's kind of crazy. Like, Cleveland is basically elite in every single rim protection metric that you would see defensively, which is worth keeping in mind. But the Hawks just got nothing going to the rim. They were 11 of 21 at the rim in this game. That's very bad, both in frequency and in accuracy. And I did see some people talking about the Hawks being out-rebounded in this game, but just the raw numbers, because Cleveland had more rebounds total than the Hawks did, which I get why people say that, but if you take one step deeper than that, Cleveland got more rebounds in the game because the Hawks missed so many shots. They actually had pretty much the exact same rebound rate as Cleveland in this game. Which was pretty good on offense, not great on defense, but it was just that the Hawks could not make a shot, and the Cavs made a lot of their shots. The Hawks actually had a better turnover rate than the Cavs in this game. They took more free throws in this game and made 22 of 24 at the free throw line. So, like, a lot went reasonably well for Atlanta, except for the shooting columns. And of all things being equal, the shooting column is the most important. So if you're going to shoot like that and have bad defense, it was a two-way loss, as I said before. Post-game, Snyder talked about the fact that they were not able to run enough in this game, and he's right. But the problem is, you need to be able to run on offense. The Hawks are relying on that on some level, but you can't run on offense if you can't get stops. The way that people in the NBA talk about like taking the ball out of the rim, you don't want to have to do that, take the ball out of the net. Like, you have to get stops to generate transition offense, and the Hawks were not able to do that on either end of the floor in this game. And look, they probably would have lost anyway, given how bad their defense was. But they obviously could not. I think the combination of this bad of shooting and this bad of defense, that leads to a collapse and a 23-point loss in a game that they probably should have been more competitive in. So that's where we have it for now. I'll leave that sort of big picture alone. We'll come back in a second and talk about more about the sort of the game flow, how this one unfolded in the middle of the game. But first, a word from our sponsors on today's podcast. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors and our partners eBay Motors and team up with Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd, bringing some of the best fantasy basketball picks each week all season long. Whether you're preparing for a daily draft or scouting a waiver wire every week, we'll provide you with some players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us on this week's edition of eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. As always, there's a full list of guys to highlight from Josh, but because there's a hawk on the list, that's who we'll go with today, and that is, of course, Saddiq Bey. The big thing with Bey right now is that he's in line for a bigger role with Jalen Johnson on the shelf. He came into Tuesday's game averaging about 28 minutes a game, and that should only go up with Jalen Johnson out. He's not elite anywhere in fantasy basketball, but he does shoot threes and make them at a pretty high clip. He can score, he can rebound, also keeps the turnovers down, and free throw percentage is up. He's definitely just basically one of those across-the-board, very helpful fantasy players that is in line for a bigger role, and with usage going up, that is always what you want to highlight in the fantasy basketball world. And Josh Lloyd for Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your championships in fantasy all season long. And eBay Motors knows a lot about championship teams as well, and they know that each player on that team is a perfect fit and has to be the case for your vehicle. I'm on the road a lot for work, and I'm going to Hawks games all the time, all over the place, and there have always been times when I've kind of needed to upgrade for my car or even just to fix a part or two to keep things running and on schedule. eBay Motors is the best place to do all of that. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride, you can make sure that your car truck stays running smoothly and on time and on schedule. Brake kits, LED lights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your vehicle happens to need, eBay Motors will have it for you. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're actually burning rubber and not burning cash. Keep your ride or die alive right now at ebaymotors.com. That is ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Okay, to the game flow in this one, and the Hawks actually had a pretty good quarter in the first quarter of this game. It feels like it was a long time ago as I recorded this podcast, but Atlanta actually won the first quarter, and they started out pretty good in this one. They did give up some easy buckets in the early going, which was sort of a flag for what was to come. I thought Saddiq Bey was the culprit a few times because when he was a low man, there was just no resistance there at all. Back cuts being wide open, and the Hawks have had really bad numbers all year long on giving up cuts for baskets, and that happened a lot in this game. There was a very funny possession from Clint Capella, who I, of course, defend regularly, where he actually tried to go coast to coast in this game after getting a steal. It was very funny. He was over his skis on that one. I thought he might have been fouled, but still, it was kind of just hilarious to watch. But I thought he was actually very good in the first quarter beyond that play. 8 points, going right at Jared Allen, 3 rebounds. I think he had a block and a steal as well in the first quarter. I thought he played well. Rotationally, it was kind of the same as it was the other night when Jalen Johnson was first out. It was AJ Griffin and Bogey as the backup wings. It was Wes Matthews as sort of the third forward type alongside Saddiq Bey. Whenever Hunter was off the court, at least they tried to do that in this game. They weren't able to do that the entire time because Hunter got hurt. But Capella played a little bit longer than usual in the first quarter because he was playing better, I think, than usual. But they had a couple nice runs, an 8-0 run in the middle of the quarter where Capella had actually blocked Max Strus on a fast break. It was a fairly even quarter. There was a 3 by Donovan Mitchell at the buzzer. There was about a 40-footer that went in. It was just kind of waved off after a review, so the Hawks were up by 4 at the end of the first quarter. And actually, the Hawks went on a 12-2 run early in the second quarter to take a 12-point lead. That was Bey's best stretch of the entire game. He had a couple of nice plays on offense, hit a 3. I thought Trey was very good in that stretch as well. But that was basically the end of the optimism for Atlanta in this game. Immediately, a response from Cleveland, an 8-0 run. The Hawks tried his zone defense, did not work at all, allowed some threes there. There was one bad break when actually it appeared that Max Strus double dribbled pretty obviously. It wasn't called, and he made a 3 on that possession. And then a big swing in the game, and some of this, I want to emphasize, is maybe coincidental because it was so bad so fast. But DeAndre Hunter tried to break a fall with his hand, and he landed on the floor, and very obviously was injured right away. So it was his right hand. The Hawks figured out during halftime that it was a right pinky finger dislocation. Ironically, the exact same wording and injury that he suffered about 3 weeks ago on November 4th in New Orleans. He came back into the game in that spot and got a lot of praise from Snyder that night in a win over New Orleans. Same tonight, Snyder went out of his way again to praise Hunter and how tough he's being and competitiveness and all that stuff. I think it's worth noting that Hunter came back, and a lot of guys would not have come back in either one of these games. But that happened about halfway through the second quarter of this game. He went straight to the locker room. The Hawks were up 10 when the play happened. And then immediately, actually immediately, 17-2 run by the Cavs to go from Hawks up 10 to Hawks down 5, and they never led again in the game. Again, I'm not saying that was the reason why the Hawks lost this game, but they were up 10 when it happened, and they ended up losing this game by 23 points. So kind of wild down the stretch. There were some really ugly moments. They were disoriented, they were disorganized. Mitchell got loose for the first time there, at least a lot in that stretch. There was actually a possession out of a timeout where the Hawks got just nothing going, and it kind of being a shot clock heave by Bogey. They were just really kind of messy at the end of the first half. Mercifully got into the halftime break only down by 3 points because defensively they were pretty sound early on. They kind of let up, and then offense they got cold. But yeah, a lot of that was kind of what the precursor was to the second half in a lot of ways. Offensively, they were a little bit better early on in the third quarter, and they actually got the lead down to 6 at one point because they got some stops strung together. Hunter had a nice play through contact once he came back into the game. I thought Trey, passing-wise, did some nice things in that third quarter, but the Cavs scored 11 points in the final 2 minutes of the third quarter, and the defense, especially when Hunter's off the floor, again, I talked about it earlier, but I'll say it again now. When Hunter left the court, defensively, it just got to be untenable. It was really kind of hard to watch. They were down 20 by the middle of the fourth quarter. They got waxed defensively early in that fourth. They scored 4 points in 4 minutes as well in the fourth quarter at one point when they were actually able to get some stops. They couldn't cut into the lead. And then there was a run of technical fouls with about 4 or 5 minutes to go. Hunter and Murray both got teed up back-to-back on the same possession. And that was basically immediately when Snyder took them out of the game and waved the white flag. So they were down like 20. It was over at that point, but it was a pretty quick hook from Snyder, which I actually thought was probably the right decision in a lot of ways. But immediately it was Trent Forrest and Garrison Matthews and AJ Griffin and Wes Matthews and Bruno Fernando. So no fooling around there. They went straight to basically the third unit, and then a look ahead to Thursday. So yeah, I mean, there were encouraging stretches. Like, I have observations on a lot of players in this game, how they performed. But again, big picture, I think the perimeter defense was the single biggest problem, followed by, in this particular game, shot making. And the shot making is just like, that's what happens in the NBA sometimes. You have bad shot making nights. The Hawks are still, even with this game factored in, a top 5 offense for the season. I have almost no concerns offensively. Yeah, being without Jalen does hurt on offense in a couple of areas, especially when it comes to transition and also when it comes to like passing. But the Hawks have enough offensive talent around the team to where I'm not worried about it. Like, would it be better off with Jalen? Sure, it would be. But I think this can still be a top 5-ish offensive team even without Jalen Johnson. The problem is defensively, it is hard to see a path for Atlanta to be even average without Jalen Johnson. It's already going to be kind of tough for the Hawks to be solid with Jalen Johnson defensively because they have so many other issues. But I'm not trying to make Jalen Johnson sound like he's like this evolutionary, dominant, first-team All-NBA defender because he's not that just yet at this point in time. But it's the guys who are replacing him, which I talked about a lot earlier this week and over the weekend, etc. But if you're just listening to this podcast now after a frustrating loss, it's really it's a talent issue, it's a execution issue. Like, for instance, we'll talk about Saddiq Bey more in a second. I don't mean to point him out individually. They got a lot of questions about that after the game. Saddiq Bey is not like, totally untalented defensively. He's got some physicality. He's pretty strong, but the combination of his lack of quickness and also his lack of attentiveness is stark. Like, it's kind of a combination of a lot of things with the Hawks right now. You have some guys who are physically limited, whether it be Trae Young for size perspective, whether it be Bogey or Bey, just side to side movement wise. There's those issues, and then you have guys like AJ Griffin's not the best athlete in the world either. Then you have guys who are just less attentive, like your Bays, your Murrays sometimes, etc. Like, it's kind of a all over the place problem, and I've joked about it a lot in the last couple of years, but the center spot's fine defensively, and basically everything else at the moment, aside from DeAndre Hunter, and who's not like a superhero either, he's just a pretty good defender. He's not like this game changer. Everything else is kind of a mess. I don't mean to paint a dire picture, but that was kind of on full display on this night. So anyway, I'll leave it there for now on the big picture game stuff, and in a second we'll talk more about the individual players and how they all performed. And if you are not familiar with this with this on the podcast, I always at the end of the podcast talk about how each guy in the rotation played in the game, some observations, some of the stats, positives, negatives, etc. Before we get to that though, a word from our sponsors on today's podcast. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. As the weather gets colder, the NBA and NFL offers stay hot at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're a new customer at FanDuel, get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 in your pocket if your team wins. Be all the awesome perks of signing up with FanDuel right now. They have all the stuff you're looking for across the sports betting space. They have point spreads, of course, and over-unders and money lines. They have player props, same-game parlays, they have futures, they have live betting. It's all there for you, and the app is safe and secure. They cover the entire range of sports as well. They have the NFL and the NBA, of course, but other stuff like college football and college basketball and golf and tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and more. And there's always options around the Hawks as well with regard to the game. Let's just say, for instance, on Thursday in San Antonio, they'll have pregame lines, they'll have live odds. When the game starts, they'll have player props, game props, and more. And now is the best possible time to join up with the folks at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and check out the official sports partner of the Locked On Podcast Network with an offer that you absolutely will not want to miss. One more time, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, and to the player-by-player portion of this podcast, not a ton of positivity incoming. I will just warn you about that right now. There were 3 guys who played only in garbage time. It was Bruno Fernando, Garrison Matthews, and Trent Forrest. Not too much to add there. I will say, it wouldn't be the worst idea for the Hawks to try Trent Forrest. I do think that Trent Forrest is probably their second best available perimeter defender right now, beyond DeAndre Hunter. That's an unfortunate reality. The problem is Forrest is so small that he doesn't really change like their fortunes. Like I think he is better than the guys they have on the perimeter. What they actually need is a guy who's forward sized. But anyway, they do like Trent Forrest. It's just that he's limited offensively, let's say. To the guys who actually played in this one, AJ Griffin had a rough night. So 0 of 8 from the floor, 0 of 4 from 3, 0 points for AJ Griffin, 1 rebound, one foul, no turnovers. I think he was not as bad as those numbers indicate. But look, we're still at the point with AJ right now where if he doesn't make shots, he is not helping you because his defense is below average. He's not playing a ton right now. It's obviously been kind of a lost season so far for AJ. I'm not panicking on him like long term, but he's on the outskirts of the rotation, and I think he's maybe pressing a little bit. And then, unfortunately, right now they need him to play minutes. He's going to have to play in this stretch, and the pressure's on him a little bit. And defensively, it's a little bit shaky, and then when the shots don't fall, and you're left with kind of what was there tonight from AJ. So, still a fan of AJ's game, big picture, but he struggled tonight. Wes Matthews, 16 minutes, did not score, 3 rebounds, 2 assists for Wes, +1 actually in his minutes. Wes Matthews is kind of the same story as you might expect, but I think he helps them defensively. He is not someone who's going to be a stopper for you against guards. Like this is a bad matchup for him in a lot of ways. Wes Matthews trying to chase around Garland and Mitchell is not playing to his strengths. He is physical and strong and kind of like old man strong against big wings. But again, I know he's 6'5", but he's really more of a combo forward than anything else right now. Like he's not really built to chase around guards. So I do believe that he is their best forward wing defender other than Hunter. So like they're trying to keep him with Saddiq Bey, which I think is the right decision defensively because when Hunter comes off the floor, they got to have somebody there that can kind of organize and be physical, but Wes is still limited. Like he's 37 years old. Like they can't expect him to play 30 minutes a night. They're not going to have him do that. But I thought he actually gave them okay minutes despite the fact that he's 0-3 from 3. But look, offensively, he's very limited. Like as much as I like Wes Matthews and he's kind of my kind of player, he's not going to help you a ton offensively. He's got to make threes, and that's kind of it for him. He took all 3 shots from 3 in this game. He'll move the ball, but we'll leave it there for now. Okongwu I thought was pretty good. 13 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists. He was at 22 minutes, 4 of 8 from the floor, 1 of 1 from 3. The Hawks ran a play for him from 3-point range. It's actually his 4th 3 of the season. He's not made a ton of 3s so far. I think he's like 4 of 20 or something like that this year. But they're letting him do it. They're calling plays for that. I kind of like that approach, to kind of have him be eased in. I thought the Hawks might try Okongwu and Capella in this game, and they did not do it. I thought it would have been a good chance to go ahead and try that against a big unit like Mobley and Allen, but they didn't do it in this game. I don't know when they will again. They did it once this year so far, plus preseason a little bit. But I think that's another option. Not that it's a cure-all, but if they're looking for defensive-minded solutions, playing more of Okongwu with the 4 might be a good scenario in some ways. Like offensively, will you have some challenges with Capella and Okongwu? Yes, but defensively, Okongwu has the mobility on the perimeter that you probably need, and he's just a much better defensive player than a lot of your other guys on the perimeter. But I thought he was pretty good in this game. In fact, I might argue he probably had the best game. Either he or Capella, ironically, had the best games at the same position. But there you go. Bogey was okay. 18 points on 16 shots, took 10 threes, had 6 rebounds, 2 steals. It was more of just defensively, he was really rough. Offensively, he was one of their best players, despite the fact that he missed 10 shots. But I thought he at least gave them a lot of threat offensively. Just defensively, he was a little bit shaky. But he had 18 points to lead all scorers for Atlanta. To the starters in this one, Saddiq Bey, 8 minutes, 4 of 8 from the floor, 1 of 1 from 3. The Hawks ran a play for him from 3-point range. It's actually his 4th 3 of the season. He's at 22 minutes, 4 of 8 from the floor, 1 of 1 from 3. On the stat sheet, 14 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals for Saddiq Bey. He actually was the only guy other than the centers to make more than half of his shots, 5-8 from the floor. I thought he was really bad in this game. He did make shots, which is helpful, and I think Bey, his value does come mostly as a shooter and a floor spacer and someone who can get to the rim a little bit with some bully ball. But, man, defensively, he was, I thought, pretty glaringly their worst player on the floor in this one defensively. Maybe you could say Griffin and his limited minutes, but Bey was really rough defensively. Back cuts, falling asleep, not executing. And, like, when he's dialed in, it doesn't look bad. It's just that, I don't know if it's mental processing or what it is, but he gets beat so much and rotates and misses rotations and also, like, physically limited in terms of spacing. So, I don't want to pile on a guy who, like, he was not the only one. I'll be very honest about that. It was not a one-person issue. But I thought he was probably the epitome of the issues in this game because defensively he just could not give any answers, and offensively he made some shots, but he was one of the only guys that did. But man, he struggled, I thought, in this one. DeAndre Hunter, kind of a weird game, like I mentioned before. He left the game for a while, came back in. It's his right hand, but it's his pinky, so we'll see. He didn't miss any time the first time around, so that's a good sign. But 18 points for Hunter in 26 minutes. 1 of 6 from 3, but was actually 4 of 6 on 2s. Got to the line 7 times. I thought he played aggressively. I thought Hunter was pretty good, honestly. He wasn't great, like nobody was defensively on the perimeter, but I thought he gave them their best minutes. They were better when he was on the court. I know they got beat by 18 when he was on the court, but it doesn't really matter. I thought he was competitive in this one, and I think Snyder talked about that. Went out of his way to kind of talk about how positive he was about Hunter in this game, and I agree with that. He was playing tough, and in general, he's been pretty good the last week or so. From there, Capella, I thought was good in the first half, not as good in the second half. Like a lot of guys weren't. 14 points, 9 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks. I thought he played fairly well. Like I don't have a ton to add. I thought he was better than Jared Allen in their first stretch together. But he cooled off like everybody else did in the second half. DeJounte Murray, I thought, man, he's really not playing very well right now. Like he had, and they all count. I'll be very clear about that too. They all count. But his early season stretch, he was playing really well. It got to the point where I still can't believe this happened, honestly. It got to the point where I was hearing from Hawks, like a lot of Hawks fans, saying that he was the best player on the team. And I just could not understand that viewpoint. I never have understood that. Like, Trey is very obviously the best player, and that's kind of always been the case. But, DeJounte kind of had an unsustainably hot start shooting-wise, and he's regressed a little bit. The last 4 games, he is 17 of 62 from the floor. That does coincide, as I said, I actually said this on Sunday's show as well, but if you missed that one, he got banged up a little bit exactly 4 games ago and was listed on the injury report with a right quad contusion, and exactly at that point was when this little swoon began. So he might be banged up. I will certainly account for that, but I thought he played very poorly in this game. Offensively, 13 points, yes, but had 1 assist in the game. Processing-wise, just like making some weird decisions, not running the offense. When Trey left the floor offensively, the Hawks really sputtered. And then defensively, you would hope that Murray could give you good minutes on either Garland or Mitchell or both, and that just did not happen in this game. I think defensively, he's probably been better this year on the whole than he was last year, because I thought it was very bad last year by his standards. But he's not giving them what they're needing on defense. And I think I'll stop here and just say the Hawks just need more from a few individual players right now defensively. And that is, I would highlight Murray and Bey above all because of the roles. Because Murray and Bey are going to play a lot. Obviously, Bey is in line for 30-plus minutes per game right now without Jalen Johnson, and obviously Murray's going to play a lot no matter what. They just have to have those guys play better defense. I mean, it's not just them. They need more from AJ. They need more from a lot of different guys, and you can't fix Jalen Johnson's problems, but you have to get more from, especially from DeJounte and Bey, because they're core pieces. Murray's already signed long term. Bey they traded a bunch of stuff for. They have to have more from those guys, and that included tonight. And then Trey, as we always, I would say always, mostly end with Trey usually. 13 points, 10 assists for Trey. He had a bad shooting night. He was maybe due for one. He had, I think, 3 or 4 good ones in a row before this. He was 3-14 from the floor, 1 of 6 on 2s, 2 of 8 from 3. I thought he actually passed the ball very well at times in this one, but just did not make shots. And I said it before, but the Hawks are not going to win very often when Trey and DJ are, I believe, 8 of 28 from the floor. That's a losing recipe for this Hawks team. So, yeah, it was rough. I'll leave it there for now. I don't think the sky is falling. I've seen a lot of typical negativity about this loss, and I get it. They did not play well at all. They played a good team, and the advanced, I talked about this a little bit today, and of course the people were sort of responding to this after the game was over, but a lot of the advanced metrics, your EPMs, your Synergy Sports metrics, cleaning the glass, all kind of paint a better picture of this Hawks team right now than the 8-9. And I'm actually on that side. Does that mean that everything is perfect? No, it does not. And look, flat out, the Hawks are worse without Jalen Johnson. Like, there's no way around that. And I think nationally, because Jalen's not been like fully established yet in his third season, that will sort of get overlooked, I would imagine, in some circles. But if you're a regular Hawks watcher, you will know that even if I think that some people are maybe overrating Jalen as a player today compared to his upside long term, he definitely helps them. And being without him really hurts, especially with their current situation. So like all that should be baked in. But they didn't play well tonight. It's a bad loss. It's not it's a bad performance, I should say. It's not even a bad loss. Like if they just played if they had played a C+ game, they would have lost by 10 instead of 25. Is that better? I don't know. I guess it is. But anyway, we'll leave it there for now. Looking ahead briefly, the Hawks continue their road trip on Thursday evening. They will play the Spurs and Victor Wembanyama on Thursday. San Antonio has lost 12 games in a row, and they have the worst record in the Western Conference right now. So that's it's still a road game, and the Spurs have 3 days off before that game, so the Hawks might get their best shot, but that is one that is winnable. And as I said before, I know people don't love this answer and this sentence, but the Hawks have only lost to one bad team this year, and it was Charlotte in the season opener. If they lose to San Antonio on Thursday, that would become 2. But and I won't say anything's a must-win, nothing like that. But that's a game they certainly would like to win, I would imagine. Also, from there at the end of the podcast, the Hawks will find out soon enough when they will play 2 more games on their 82-game regular season schedule. So some folks have asked why the Hawks have a hole in their schedule between December 2nd and December 11th. And the answer, the short version, is that that's because of the in-season tournament, which the Hawks are now eliminated from. If they had made the quarterfinals, they would have played in that bracket during that time. But now the league has to schedule 2 more games for all 22 teams that did not make the quarterfinals, which of course includes the Hawks. One of them will be on the road. One of them will be at home. They'll be on December 6th and December 8th. We don't know, as I record this podcast, which one is which or where the games are or who they're going to play. All of that is up for the league to decide. You may even know by the time you listen to this podcast. It could be announced as soon as tonight. I don't know exactly. I've actually tried to ask what the timeline is going to be, but at the very least, they have to wait until the in-season tournament field is set. And as I record this podcast at about 11:30 p.m., that has not happened yet. So keep that in mind. At some point, either on Twitter or on this podcast or on Patreon, I will write about, at least quickly reference where the Hawks will be playing on those 2 games. But December 6th and December 8th will be Hawks games. They'll be regular season games. They will count in the standings. And I don't know who they're going to play or where they're going to play at this point in time. Okay, that's all I have on this game, and also looking forward again. PSA, the next podcast will be after the game on Thursday, unless something happens Wednesday that will command attention, but the plan will be for a show after the game on Thursday, because this is, again, already the 4th show of the week as of Tuesday night. But as a final PSA for our new listeners or folks who might have not heard this recently, there is some extra bonus audio content in the audio-only feeds of this podcast. If you're subscribed to the show on Apple or Spotify or Google Podcasts or Overcast, you will see some bonus post-cast shows from the folks at the Locked On Podcast Network, and also Locked On Sports Atlanta. That's just bonus content, no less from me. But if you are into the Hawks, as I'm sure you will be listening to this podcast, there's just more to listen to there from folks at Locked On Sports Atlanta. And then also, I encourage you, as I always do, I should say, to subscribe to this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. All those audio places, like I just mentioned, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, auto download there, 5 stars, nice comments, nice reviews, all of that is appreciated. Also, subscribe to the show on YouTube and like the podcast, and click the the notification bell, all that stuff. Share it. Tell a friend about the podcast as well. I know, in fact, I am 100% confident in this. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably know a Hawks fan or 2 or 3 or 4 that do not listen to this podcast regularly. If you do, if that is you, share the podcast with them. If they don't like it, that's okay. But have them give us a chance. I very much appreciate that, and help us to spread the word on social media, etc. Follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm on Threads occasionally. I'm trying to get out there as much as I possibly can. Also, I write about the Hawks at patreon.com/BT Rowland. That is patreon.com/BT Rowland. And with all that said, thank you as always for listening to the podcast, everybody. I really do appreciate all the support, all the time. One more PSA. I'll be back after the game on Thursday, and we'll see you all later on in the week.